Hello all of you. Now let's see section 14. Now this is a very interesting section. It deals with change in the rate of tax. Whenever there is a change in the rate of tax in between your supply and your receipt, etc., then which rate to apply? The old one or the new one? So sometimes the rate increases, sometimes the rates come down. So whatever the case may be, whether the rates are going up or coming down, which rate to apply? The old one or the new one? That is the question. So let's see. Very interesting one. Section 14. Change in rate of tax in respect of supply of goods or service. So this section applies to both goods as well as services. Okay. Now this section overrides section 12 and 13. Okay, 14 overrides both 12 and 13. Therefore it is given notwithstanding anything contained in section 12 or 13. So whenever there is a rate change and you have to apply section 14, in which cases that we are going to see now, then in these cases you will not apply the logic of section 12 or 13. Right? Very good. The time of supply where there is a change in the rate of tax in respect of goods or service or both shall be determined in the following manner. Let's see. Now what you have to do here is, in order to understand this section very clearly, conceptually, in the first go itself, focus on timing. Focus on timing. Okay, if you focus on timing of different things which are happening, one is the supply itself, the delivery you can say, one is the receipt when the money is coming in, and one is invoice. There are three things and you have to focus on the timing of these three things. Okay, the supply, when did the supply take place, when was the invoice made, and when the receipt took place. So focus on these 3 points. And there is a change in between somewhere. So sometimes the supply is before the change, money is received before the change, but invoice is made after the change. So this section is all about permutations regarding timing. Okay, sometimes the supply can be before and receipt and invoice both are after change, or one is before, one is after, or all of them before, or all of them after. So this timing is very important. Okay, understood? So focus on timing. Let's start. Clause A. In case the goods or service or both have been supplied, see, first thing, supplied before the change in rate of tax. So when is supply happening? Before the change. Okay, and supply means, supply definition remains the same. That is, in case of movement, wherever the movement is involved, the delivery to the supplier, supplier delivering the goods to the carrier, that is removal, and in other cases the actual delivery. So supply remains the same. Okay, and in case of services, supply means the completion of service. For services, supply means completion of service, which enables the supplier to make an invoice. So supply is happening before the change. Okay, fit. Supply is happening before the change. Good. Now 3 situations are given there. Number 1, where the invoice for the same has been issued and the payment is also received after the change. So one is before, supply is before. In all, we have to focus on 3 things, right? Supply, invoice, receipt. Supply, invoice, receipt. Supply, invoice, receipt. Supply, invoice, receipt. 3 things we have to see. So supply is happening before, and what clause 1 says, invoice and receipt both are after the change. Then the time of supply shall be the date of receipt of payment or the date of invoice, whichever is earlier. So you have to take earlier of these 2, the invoice and receipt, whichever is earlier. But as you can see, now you have to read this very conceptually. we are not just deciding the time, we are actually deciding which rate to apply, the old one or the new one. So focus on these 2 points. Invoice after, receipt also after. So when both are after the change, time of supply will be earlier of the two, but that earlier of the two will also be after the date of change only, right? It is anyways going to be after the change. So as it is going to be after the change, the time of supply will be after the change. So which rate you are going to apply? The new rate. The new rate of tax. So write down. New rate. So in clause 1, the new rate will be applicable. And when will the liability arise? Whichever is earlier. Okay. Second point. Where the invoice has been issued prior to the change. Invoice is prior. So one thing is prior. Invoice is prior to change in rate of tax, but payment is received after. So receipt is after. So one is before, one is after. Invoice is before, but receipt is after the change. The time of supply shall be date of issue of invoice. You have to take issue of invoice. So invoice means before. Invoice is before, prior to change, and that invoice date you are taking as the time of supply means which rate will apply. Since invoice is prior to change, you are going to apply the old rate. Now I'll explain with examples and with diagrams, so it will be much easier for you. Old rate. And third point. Third point is the reverse now of the second point, where payment has been received before. So the receipt is before, but the invoice for the same is issued after the change. So invoice is after. So receipt is before, invoice is after. So in this case, you will take the receipt of payment as the time of supply. Means which is before. So as receipt is before the change, again which rate you are going to apply? The old rate. Now, with due respect to the government which has made this law, we have read the 3 points. Now, if you apply some calculated logic, okay, some primary logic, I can say common sense. Just common sense is enough. No difficult logic. Here they have said invoice or receipt, both are afterwards, so take whichever is earlier. Here they have said invoice is before and receipt is afterwards, so take invoice. Means whichever is earlier. Invoice is before, so this is before and the receipt is after. You are taking invoice, means which is before. And in this case, you are again taking whichever is before, whichever is earlier. Receipt is earlier, invoice is later on, so they have said take receipt. Means whichever is earlier, whichever is earlier, whichever is earlier. So in all the 3 situations, the common sense says whichever is earlier. So it is very simple to remember. So this whole clause A is nothing but whichever is earlier. Okay, so they could have written it in just one single sentence, take whichever is earlier. Even if one is before, one is after, or both are after, take whichever is earlier. That's the simple logic. So now I could write this point A in one line. Okay, let's write it. So what point A says, let's see. Here is the change. Okay, change in rate of tax. Now what are the different examples of change, can you tell me? Okay, it's coming on this side. Let's move it a little bit here. Now change in rate can be many things. Let's see some examples, because you should know the practicality also. So change in rate can be that earlier our goods or service was taxable at 12%. Now the government has increased the rate in consultation with GST Council. In practical life, you see every few months there is a meeting of the council, the GST Council, and they recommend changes in rate of tax. So sometimes rates are brought down, sometimes they are taken up. So 12 becomes 18, so that is a change in rate, or 18 becomes 12, change in rate. Okay, then they give some exemptions, partial exemptions are given, that is also change in rate. Partial exemption means that 12 is reduced to 6 or 12 is reduced to 4, as the case may be, so that is change in rate. Even if some exemption is granted, that is also change in rate. Yeah, if our services were taxable at 12%, now it has been brought down to nil, that is also change in rate. So giving of exemption or withdrawal of an exemption, our services or goods were chargeable at 0% or nil rate, you can say, and suddenly they have been brought under 12% bracket, so that is also change in rate. So change in rate includes giving of exemption, withdrawing of exemption, or making the rate up and down. Okay, all these things will be called as change in rate. So there is a change in rate. Earlier it was say 18% and now it is 12%. Okay, so old rate 18 and the new rate 12%, and this change happens on say 15th of August on the day of our independence. Okay, now let's see. So what this clause A says, that supply is before. So this remains fixed. Supply is before the change. So this is the timeline. So we are moving from here to here. Okay, so this is the timeline. Timeline goes like this. So this is before. Anytime before, say for example 10th of July. 10th of July supply means before 15th August. Okay, now let's see what is going to happen. So the first point says that if receipt, so I'll write small r in one alphabet, and invoice, I is for invoice, are both issued after the change, then you have to take whichever is earlier. So whichever is earlier will be R. So this date, suppose this is on 21st of August and this is on 29th of August, so you will take 21st August as time of supply. So this becomes our TOS. Okay, so basically you are taking whichever is earlier. Great. Then in the second case they have said, second and third, in one case they say if the receipt is before, if the receipt is before, say for example on the change is on 15th August, so let's take receipt as, okay, let's do one thing because you will then confuse. So this is one example, so we'll draw a line there and then we'll write second example. Receipt is say on 10th of August, let's take it as 10th August, and the invoice is afterwards on say 29th of August. So they say that take receipt, means if you compare these two, it is earlier. So this becomes my time of supply. Now wait a second here, don't write, let me finish. And in third case they have said invoice is before. So now invoice is on say 10th of August and receipt is afterwards on say 30th of August. So then they say that take invoice date. This becomes my time of supply. Means again, if you compare these two, whichever is earlier. So in all the three situations, it is whichever is earlier only. Okay, but the rate which is applicable is different. In this case, as the time of supply is this date, 21st of August, and from 15th August the rate has changed. So which rate will apply? The new rate. Here the new rate of tax will apply, that is 12%. So this is taxable at 12%. But these two cases, as you can see, the time of supply is before. So here you will apply the old rate of 18%. So the tax applicable will be 18% in these two cases. Understood? Very simple. But now I'll introduce one more point. So see, if there are two things, then there can be four possibilities. 4 permutations can be there. If you are taking 2 variables, there can be 4 permutations. This we had studied in CPT, permutations and combinations. 2, so 2 raised to the power 2. Okay, so both of them afterwards, one is before, one is after, the other one is before and the first one is after, and the fourth possibility is absolutely right, both are before. So what will happen if invoice and receipt both are before the change? So let's take that possibility. So this is say on 10th of August and the receipt on 11th of August. So if both are before, then which rule will apply? Only 3 permutations are covered in section 14. So if this situation arises, then what will happen? 14 is not applicable. My dear friends, 14 will not apply in this case. What do we have to do with change? My supply is before, my invoice is also before, and my receipt is also before. Where is change? There is no change. Change is not affecting me. Change affects only when out of these 3 variables, supply, invoice, receipt, some are before and some are after. Then 14 applies. But if all the 3 are before, then section 14 will not apply. This case will be governed by section 12 or 13 as the case may be. If it is goods, section 12. If it is services, section 13. So this situation will be governed by section 12 or section 13 as the case may be. Okay. And in section 12 and 13 you will have to apply different rules, different fundamentals. Forward charge, reverse charge, then vouchers and this and that. Lot of things. Okay. So this is clause A. Now if we want to write it in words, this is the diagrammatic representation. So it is simple. Section 14 clause A says supply. Now I'll write in points form. Supply before change. Okay, supply before change. And receipt or invoice. Receipt or invoice, both after change or any one after change. Either both of them are after change or any one of them is after change. Okay, receipt or invoice, both after change or any one after change. Then you apply section 14 clause A. And in section 14 clause A, the time of supply will be receipt or invoice, whichever is earlier. Very simple. Receipt or invoice, whichever is earlier. And when is it applicable? In this situation. Supply is before change and receipt or invoice, any one of these two is before, one is before, one is after, or both are after. Done. Very simple. You'll remember. Great. So take down and then come back. Then moving to clause B. Clause B says in case the goods or services or both have been supplied after the change. So supply is now after. Second situation. So in clause A, supply was before. In clause B, supply is after the change. Now again 3 situations. First, where the payment is received after the change. So receipt is after. but the invoice has been issued prior. Invoice is prior. So one is after, one is prior. Okay, one is after, one is prior. Payment is after, but invoice is prior to change. The time of supply shall be the date of receipt. So date of receipt means whichever is earlier or whichever is later. Later. See, payment is received after, invoice is before, so invoice is first and then comes the payment. So they have said take the date of receipt, means whichever is later. So rule is later. And as the rule is of later one, which is after the change, which rate will apply? The new rate. So here also let us see 123 and then I'll explain the logic. The common sense logic, the very simple logic. Now, come down to 3 first. Where the invoice has been issued after. So now invoice is after the change in the rate of tax. But payment is received before. So now invoice is after and receipt is before. And in clause 1 what was happening? The receipt was after and invoice was before. So invoice is before, receipt after. Now invoice after and receipt before. The change. Time of supply shall be the date of issue of invoice. Means again later one. So clause 1 and clause 3 are same. Only thing is, out of these two variables, the invoice and the receipt, one is before and the other is after. So any one out of these two is before and the other one is after. So if one is before and one is after, you'll apply the rule whichever is later. So actually they should have been written in just one clause. That if the payment is received or the invoice is issued earlier and the other one is after, one of them is before and one of them is after, you have to apply the rule whichever is later. So when you apply the rule whichever is later, means the after one, means the new rate will apply. So here also it will be the new rate. Got it? So what will be clause 2 now? If both of them are before the change. If both of them are before. So that is given in clause 2. That where the invoice has been issued and the payment is received before the change. Means both of them, invoice and payment, the receipt, are before. Then the time of supply shall be the date of receipt or the invoice, whichever is earlier. So here the rule is earlier. And both of them are before the change. So if you take earlier also, that will be before the change only. So therefore you will apply the old rate of tax. Okay, you will apply the old rate of tax. So let's put this also in a small chart and understand. And then I'll give you the logic. So again let us take change. And now change is happening on say 17th of September. Okay. So before the rate was say now 9% and afterwards it has been brought to 12%. Okay, let me explain one more point here, because some students might be skeptical. They might not understand that which is the date on which the rate changes. So if I have written 17th of September, means what? The rate is changing from 17th September. So if the time of supply comes exactly on 17th September, then which rate to apply? Obviously the new one. So whenever I say, means whenever the government says, I don't say, whenever the government says that we are changing the rate, say for example on 17th of September, the new rate comes into force right from 12 midnight of 17th September. Okay, so let me explain. This is 16th. This is the whole day of 16th, starting with 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, these are the hours, and right up to 24. 24 hours. Night 12 o'clock. And then begins the 17th. 17 September begins. So as soon as the 17 September begins, the new rate will apply right from the 0th hour. Right from 0th hour. So if the time of supply comes on 17, maybe midnight, that is 12 o'clock and 1 minute, to any time during the day, you will apply the new rate. Okay. So right from 0 to 24, anytime. If TOS is on 17th, you will apply the new rate. And if TOS is on 16th, you will apply the old rate. Okay, understood? Very good. So the date which is given, that the change is from this day, means it is from that day itself, not the next day. The change is from 17th itself. So if the TOS is on 17, it means after the change. It means after. So you will apply the new rate. Okay, you have taken down. Shall I rub it off? Very good. Now let's see. So this is the change, 17 September. Now, the important point is that the supply is taking place after the change. Okay. Say for example on 26th September. So supply is afterwards. Now, if both are before, the invoice and the receipt are both before the change. Say for example invoice is on 10 September and receipt is on 13 September. But both are before the 17th of September. 17 September is the change and both of them are before. So now you have to take whichever is earlier, means 10 September. So this is our time of supply. And which rate will apply? 9%, that is the before rate. The old rate will apply. Now why they have given whichever is before? See, anyways, whether you take this as 10th of September as the time of supply or you take 13th as time of supply, you take 10th or you take 13th, rate is going to be same, 9%. Rate is going to be the old one only. But government gains if they take whichever is earlier. Now in this example, since both are in the same month, so anyways you are going to pay tax for the month of September. So date of payment will remain same because both are in the same month. And normally the liability is on monthly basis. So whatever time of supply comes in a particular month, if there are 2000 different transactions and all of them happen in the month of September, the TOS is in the month of September, we will pay the consolidated tax of the whole turnover together. And the due date of payment will be 20th of the next month. That is the maximum that you have for payment. Okay. Now these points we'll study in the chapter of payment also. So there is no difference. But suppose one of them is in August and one of them is in September. Then government wants to collect tax at the earliest point. They want to collect tax for the month of August itself. Why wait till September? So therefore they have taken whichever is earlier. So if one is in the month of August or in the month of July, government will recover tax at the earliest point. So therefore they have taken whichever is earlier. Because anyways the rate is going to be same. So that is the first point. Now second, if one of them is before, say for example receipt is before on say 13th of September and one is after on say 29th of September, then they say you have to take this whichever is later. So then we'll apply the rule of whichever is later, because anyway supply is afterwards. So they have said take whichever is later, means apply the new rate. Here the government's fundamental is the logic of the government, the interpretation, the legislative intent is to apply the new rate. So you should apply the new rate because anyways the service is after, the supply is happening after. So let's apply the new rate. So this new rate would be applicable here, and I'll tell you the more detailed logic also. Just wait a second. So here, what is the new rate? 12%. So here we'll apply 12%. So this is our time of supply. And similarly, if you do it in a reverse, that is, invoice is before on say 13 September and the receipt is now on 29 September. Still, you will take whichever is later, that is the receipt one, and apply 12%. Okay. So now you'll ask me, sir, why this whichever is later? Why not whichever is earlier? Why not old rate? Out of these two, why whichever is later? See, I'll give you an example. The supply is anyways going to take place after the change. Right? The supply, this is already the change has happened, and the supply is after the change. Now take an example that you are going to come to my class after 17 September and there is a change of rate. 9 has become 12. Suppose, for example. So in order to save tax, in order to save your money 3%, there is increase in rates. So in order to save that, I'll advertise in the newspapers that look, whoever is going to join my class in the month of October, I'm going to start with a new batch in October or November. Do one thing, make me payment before 17 September. Book your class in advance and save tax. So I'll issue a big newspaper ad. Join my class before 17 September and save tax. So even though the class is going to happen later on, but the intelligent students, those who understand this concept, will come to me before 17 September, make a payment. So if you make a payment, I will receive the amount. And if I receive the amount before, and if we are going to apply the logic of whichever is before, which we normally do, then 13th will become time of supply. If 13 becomes time of supply, then we can save the tax. Let the invoice be issued afterwards. Let the class happen afterwards. You will save tax. Okay, so people might do this. So therefore, to avoid this, the government has said, no, we will take whichever is later, because anyways the class is going to happen after. So if this supply is going to happen afterwards, we will take whichever is later. Means this means the new rate. But if supply is before, like in the clause A, if supply already happens, so then the benefit is given to the supplier. Then okay, supply has already happened, class has already happened. If you receive the amount here, it's a genuine payment. You are not doing it for avoiding tax. It's a genuine payment. So they take whichever is earlier. So in clause A, the rule is whichever is earlier. But in clause B, the rule is whichever is later. In which case, if one is before and one is after. Because otherwise people could have received the advances and avoided tax. And services would have been given, the supply would have been given later on. So government says, no, we will not allow that. So hence, whichever is later. Now, in order to save tax, you can do one thing. And that is, keep both earlier. So that much is allowed by the government. So I will still advertise in the newspapers. All those who want to save tax, you can join my batch 1 year afterwards, but make me payment right now. Advance booking opens for May 19 students, May 20 students, and so on and so forth. So I'll receive in advance. I will give you the invoice also. I'll take money, I'll give you invoice. Finish. Then come to the class. 2 years down the line, 3 years down the line. It doesn't matter to me. In that case, you will save tax. Okay, so understood this point? Now again, we'll take that fourth scenario if both are afterwards. So if both invoice and receipt are after the change, then what will happen? Then this rule will not apply. Then you have to apply section 12 or 13 respectively. For goods section 12 and for services section 13. Because if all the three happen afterwards, supply, invoice and receipt, then change doesn't apply to you. Change doesn't affect you because everything is happening afterwards. So then you have to follow section 12 or 13 respectively. Understood? Very good. Excellent. So that is section 14, but one more simple logic remains here. Let's see. So come down to the nodes. Yeah. Now there is a proviso. Very interesting proviso, which says that the date of receipt of payment shall be the date of credit in the bank account if such credit in the bank account is after 4 working days. 4 WDs. 4 working days means excluding holidays, if any, from the date of change in the rate of tax. Understood? No? Okay, so let's see what this means. This is change. Okay. Now we have seen the basic rules, clause A and clause B. Okay. But now what do we normally take as the date of receipt of payment? As we have seen in section 12 and 13, the date of receipt of payment is the day on which we make the book entry, or the day when it is credited to our bank account, whichever is earlier. That is the normal rule. Book entry or bank credit, whichever is earlier, right? So I'll write that also here. What is the date of receipt of payment? The book entry, you give me a check and I make a book entry, or credit in bank account, the check goes into bank and it gets credited there, the actual realization of money, whichever is earlier. Okay, this is the normal rule, but in this case, in case of change, let's see what this proviso says. In case of change in rate, suppose this is the date of change, 17th September. The book entry is made before. The book entry is made before the change. But I put the check in the bank for clearance. Normally it should clear within 3 to 4 days, right? Normally it should clear. So the clearance comes after the change. The clearance means the bank credit is after the change. Now first let me explain the literal meaning, what is given there, and then I'll explain you why it is given there. What is the logic behind this? What is the intention of the government behind this? Okay. So bank credit is after the change. So government says that if this bank credit is within 4 working days after the change, so if the change is on 17th, we'll calculate 4 days as 4 working days will be, if there are no holidays, then it will be 18th, 19th, 20th and 21st. If there is no holiday, means suppose if this is Monday, so this is Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, all working days, bank is open. But if suppose anyone is a holiday, like if this is Friday itself, so Saturday, suppose the bank is working, but Sunday is holiday. So if 19th is holiday, we'll exclude that. So then we'll count as Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday. Means Saturday, then Monday, then Tuesday, then Wednesday. Or if some other public holiday comes in between, gazetted holidays where the banks are closed, so then we'll exclude that holiday. So it will be calculated likewise. So 4 working days after the change. Okay. So change is on 17th, so you will count 4 days as 18th, 19th, 20th and 21st. Now if the bank credit comes in between these 4 days, say bank credit is on 20th, it is within 4 working days, then you will apply the normal rule. Normal rule is book entry or bank credit, whichever is earlier. So my date of receipt will be counted as the date of book entry because that is earlier. That is say on 15th September. So this is before 15th, then there is a change and the money still comes in my bank within the 4 working days. Then this date will be the date of receipt. Okay. Then I will compare it with invoice and then take whichever is earlier or whichever is later as the case may be. Second, if the bank credit is on 29th, there is a big delay. So 4 days have gone, 21st is gone, and thereafter the amount comes in my bank account. And the book entry was here before. Book entry was on the same day, 15 September. As in the earlier case. So book entry is on 15 September, but the check is cleared and it comes in my bank account on 29th of September. Oh, so government says that in this case, we will take the date when it comes in the bank account as the date of receipt. So date of receipt will be taken as the bank credit. This is what the proviso says, that if the bank credit is after 4 working days, 4 working days have expired and then the amount comes in my bank account, then in that case we will take the actual date of entry in bank account, means credit in bank account, as the date of receipt and then compare it with invoice. Understood? If it is within 4 working days, great. Or if the bank credit is before the change itself, then we'll apply the normal rule. If both receipt means book entry and bank credit happens before, then we'll apply normal rule. If both happen afterwards, then also we'll apply normal rule. But if one is before, one is after, that is book entry is before, bank credit is afterwards, and it is beyond 4 working days, then this is the exception. This is exception. Then we'll take bank credit as the date of receipt. Now ask me why. Good. You should ask. Keep asking. I can hear you. The reason is, see, very simple. As I told you that I'll make an advertisement in newspaper that whoever wants to save tax, come to me. Come to me before 17 September. Make the payment, and if you make payment to me, you'll save tax, because earlier the old rate is 9 and the new rate is going to be 12 or 17 or whatever. Now a person may come. He will come to me. He will come to me and say that, look sir, I am coming to you on 15 September. Take the check, give me the invoice, and we'll save tax. I say, very good. You are an excellent, you are intelligent student, very good. Come to me, pay me on 15 September, that is before 17. So I'll receive the check, I'll give you the invoice. So invoice issued, check received, and then I'll put the check in my bank. How much time it will take to clear? It may clear even before 17th. Or at the most, 18th, 19th, 20th, 21st. How many more days will it take? It will clear. If it's a genuine transaction, if you have actually given me the check on 15th, it will take 2, 3, 4 days to clear in any circumstance. So we are safe. If it gets cleared by 21st at the most, then we are safe. I have given you the invoice and this becomes the receipt. So invoice, receipt both earlier means the old rate will apply, even though you may attend the class after 2 years. Understood? So we'll save tax. So the good intelligent students will do this. Then there are few students who are skeptical. Actually, intelligent students are very less. When I'll advertise, people will look with, sir is trying to make money out of this. Arey bhai, I'm not making money, I'm helping you guys. But a lot of people don't understand. They don't understand. They don't appreciate good things. They are skeptics. So they will say that no, there is something hidden in this. We will not go. So they don't come. They come later on. Maybe they'll come to me on first week of October when the class is going to start. And then when they come down for counseling and they sit with me, I say that now you have to pay 12% tax. They say, no sir, it was 9% earlier. I said, didn't you read my newspaper advertisement? They say, yes, we read. Then what did you do? Sir, we were skeptical. We didn't think it can happen. But sir, it was a mistake. Please pardon us. Please, issue a backdated invoice. And issue, we'll give a check and we'll write on the check 15th of September. Now whatever you do, even if you write on the check 15th September and give it to me, even I make a backdated book entry and I issue a backdated invoice. Okay, possible. I'll issue invoice and I'll enter the check in my book also. But will it clear in the bank? No, because you are coming to me in first week of October. So when I put the check in the bank, it will clear on say 8th or 9th of October, which is much beyond these 4 working days. So what are we trying to do? We are trying to do a backdated entry. So book entry can be done backdated, but bank clearance cannot happen, backdated. So there the government has caught us. So government says no. Now how to find out whether this entry is a fake one or a real one? So they have said this criteria. They have set the criteria. They say that okay, whatever the book entry may be, we'll believe it to be true, provided the check is cleared within 4 working days there. And it is not 4 working days from the date of book entry, it is 4 working days after the date of change. So government has given you enough time. Even after the change they have given 4 days. Let it clear. If it clears, then we'll believe in this book entry that it must be genuine, it must be real, and therefore accepted. But this book entry will not be accepted. This is a fake book entry. How? Because if this would be real, your check would have cleared in between these 3-4 days. But how can this happen that the book entry, you have given me a check on 15th September and it is clearing in the bank on say 10th of October or thereafter? How? That's not possible. And if that is happening, means this book entry is a fake one. So then government disbelieves this book entry and they say receipt will be taken as this date when the bank clearance take place. And if that is the case, then even if I have issued a backdated invoice, so one will be before, one will be after, we'll take whichever is later. So the receipt date will become time of supply, means anyways you will have to pay 12% tax. Understood? So many logics behind each point of law. Great. So I hope you understand. Very good. I don't commend against any teachers, but these days there is a new crowd coming in, new type of the teacher category are coming up, who just make it fun, right? They shout and they do this and they do lot of drama and stuff, and they feel that is the best way of teaching, but I don't believe in that. I don't believe in that. Teaching is about going in depth, finding out what is not written in the law. If I scream and shout and do drama and style and here and there, a lot of things, and rap and whatnot, what will happen? You can mug up these words, but what will happen after mugging up these words? Nothing. Nothing is going to happen. At least in law, all these tactics don't work. Then please don't go after those tactics. It looks gimmicky, it looks attractive, but it is not worthy. It's not worth the money that you pay. If you want gimmicks, go and watch a movie. Go and watch a comedy movie if you want. And why even to spend? There are so many movies available on the net. You can watch them free of cost. Go to YouTube channels, AIB and this and that. You get a lot of comedy there. But don't put comedy in class, okay? Anyways, let's see. Then last explanation is there. For the purpose of this section, the date of receipt of payment shall be date on which the payment is entered in the books of accounts of the supplier, or the date on which the payment is credited in his bank account, whichever is earlier. This is the normal rule. Yes, all of you remember. Section 12, section 13, it was the same. Receipt means earlier of the two. So this is the normal rule, but the proviso that we have seen is an exception to this normal rule. So that was section 14. Now let's see the analysis. We'll see it fast because you have already studied everything. So whatever diagrams we have made are given here again. This section deals with determination of time of supply of goods or service, or both in case of change in rate of tax. Now case 1. Different cases are again defined here. Where the invoice, in case the goods or services or both have been supplied before, so supplies before. This is the first scenario, supplies before, clause A, section 14(1)(a). In that there are three situations. So case 1, case 2 and case 3. So case 1 is, I can explain through this diagram itself. The change is on say 10 July, supplies before say on 5th July, and invoice is made on 15th August, payment is received on 20th August. So if both are afterwards, still you take whichever is earlier. So whichever is earlier will be 15th of August. So this will become time of supply, whichever is earlier. And if this is time of supply, which rate you will apply, the old or the new? The new one. New rate will be applicable. Then case 2 is there where invoice is before, payment is after. So one is before, one is after. So if one is before, one is after, you will take whichever is earlier. So time of supply will be 7 July. And if time of supply is 7 July, the rate will be old rate of tax. And in case 3, so here again, as you can see, we'll take that also into consideration, that 4 working days concept. Okay. Now in the first example, supplies before, and in case of receipt, entry in books and credit in bank, both as you can see are before the change. This is the change line, and both of the two are happening before. So if both are happening before, you will take whichever is earlier. Entry in books or bank credit, whichever is earlier, will be taken as the receipt. So first, whichever is earlier means the receipt. So this is receipt, whichever is earlier. 5th July is my receipt. Now if the receipt is before and invoice is afterwards, then you have to take whichever is earlier. So this is a receipt. So this 5th July will also become time of supply. So time of supply will also be 5th July. And as it is before, you will apply the old rate of tax. Then in that the second one, second illustration, Here, as you can see, supplies before, but entry in books is on 8 July. 10 July is a change. So if we count 4 days, it will be 11th, 12th, 13th and 14th. These are the 4 working days. The bank credit comes on 12th. That is within 4 working days. Within 4 working days. So if entry is before, bank credit is afterwards, but within 4 working days, then we'll take whichever is earlier. So whichever is earlier will be 8th of July. So 8th July will be considered as the date of receipt. Okay. Now if this is receipt and invoice is afterwards, one is before, one is after, then you will take whichever is earlier. That is date of receipt. So date of receipt, that is 8th July, will become time of supply. And you will take the old rate. And suppose, now another example is not given here, but suppose, in this example, illustration 2, if we suppose that this credit happens after 14th, suppose if this is on 17th, then I would take this as a receipt. So then what will happen? Receipt and invoice both become afterwards. Then you have to take whichever is earlier, but this date will be considered as the time of supply. And therefore it will attract the new rate of tax. Then second point is, in case goods or services both have been supplied after. So if the supply is after, then again 3 situations. So as you can see in the first one, supply is afterwards and invoice is before and the receipt is afterwards. If one is before, one is afterwards, you will take whichever is later. So this becomes time of supply. Now here it is given earlier, please correct it. It is whichever is later. It's by mistake. So make it whichever is later. And therefore new rate will apply. Then case 2, supplies afterwards but invoice and receipt both are before. If both are before, then you take whichever is earlier. So here it is correct, whichever is earlier, that will be 5th of July. So time of supply will be 5th July. This. And it will attract old rate of tax. Then case 3, along with the 4 working days criteria, let's see. Supplies afterwards, good. Invoice is also afterwards. So supply and invoice are afterwards. In payment, we take entry in books or bank credit, whichever is earlier. Now if both of them are before change, then we'll apply normal rule, whichever is earlier rule. So whichever is earlier will be 3rd of July. So this is my receipt. R, this is receipt. So if receipt is earlier and invoice is afterwards, you will take whichever is later. That is invoice. So this will be the time of supply, 2nd August. And it will attract new rate of tax. Simple. And then again, another scenario is given. Book entries before. Now see, we'll start from here. Supplies afterwards. Invoice is also afterwards. Now let's calculate receipt first. Book entry 2nd July. Bank credit, let's count first 4 working days. 10th is the date of change. So 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th. These are the 4 working days. And your bank credit comes on 16th, that is after 4 working days. So this will become my receipt. 16 July is the date of receipt. Receipt, invoice, both afterwards, and services also afterwards. So in this case, actually speaking, we are not going to apply section 14. So even though it is given whichever is earlier, but this is as per the normal rule. So here you will apply section 12 or 13 and not 14. Then there are a few questions given. How to determine date of receipt of payment? Simple. Entry in books or bank credit, whichever is earlier. But you will write the exception also, that if the credit is after 4 working days from the date of change, then the bank credit date will be taken as the date of receipt of payment. And then there is another illustration given. The rate of duty was 18% till 31st July and changed to 12% from 1st of August. GST will be calculated as under. Now see, date of supply is given. So supply we have to see first whether it is before or after. Then invoice date and receipt date. 3 dates are given. These are the 3 variables that we have to see and decide the time of supply. And depending upon time of supply, we'll see which rate is applicable, the old one or the new one. Change is 1st August. So let's take first case. Supply 10 July. So is it before or after? Before. So write B. So if supply is before, then we'll apply the rule invoice or receipt, whichever is earlier. Whichever is earlier. Simple rule. Excuse me. Whichever is earlier. So 20th July or 10th August, whichever is earlier, 20th July. So this becomes time of supply. If 20th July is the time of supply, then you will apply the old rate, that is 18%. Case 2, 10th July. 10th July is again before. Now if this is before, we'll again apply whichever is earlier rule. 5th September, 25th of July. Now important point is that one should be before and one should be after. If both of means all the 3 are before, then section 12 or 13 will apply. Okay. So like say one is before, one is after. Very good. But we'll take whichever is earlier, means 25th July. And 25th July is before 1st August. So again old rate 18%. Third situation, 10 July again before. 5th August, 10th August, both are afterwards, but the rule is whichever is before. So 5th August, and it will attract new rate of tax. Case 4, 10th of August means after. So this is now after. If it is after, then we'll have to see whether both invoice and receipt are before, or one of them before, one of them after. If both are before, then whichever is earlier. If one before, one after, then whichever is later. So let's see. 25th July, 5th August. One is before, one is after. So we'll apply the rule whichever is later. So 5th August. New rate. Again, next one, 10th August means after. One is before, 25th July, and one is after. One is before, one is after, so whichever is after. 5th September, new rate. 10th August, last one, after. 20th July, 25th July. Both are before. If both are before, then you will take whichever is earlier. So both of them are earlier, then you take whichever is earlier, means 20th July. So here you make correction. It will be 20th July. And if the time of supply is 20th of July, it will attract old rate of tax. The old rate of tax is 18%. Actually, this is not a mistake. I have changed this point actually in the question, but I forgot to change the answer. So earlier it was 25th of August. I made it 25th of July. If this is 25th of August, means one before, one after, then you will take whichever is later. That was 25th August. So make correction in the answer. Simple. And then at the last there is a notification given there. Time of supply of development rights. A new notification has come here. So let me explain this point to you. First of all, let us understand what we mean by development rights. Take an example that you are owner of a big piece of land in the heart of the city. Big piece of land means something like 10 acres. Whew, 10 acres of land. So I'll ask question, why are you doing CA? You have got enough money. Go and enjoy. Go and have a life. But nevertheless, so you are doing it for hobby sake. Great. Or for knowledge sake. Still great. Okay, forget about it. So you have a big piece of land, 10 acres. But the problem is, you don't have money to construct a building on it. You don't have money. So you are not a builder, first of all, and you don't even have money to construct a big flat scheme and then sell it off. Firstly, you have to invest the money and then you can construct and then sell. But you don't have money. So what you do is, you go to a builder who has a lot of money and you enter into an agreement with him. In this agreement, you grant him development rights. That is a right to develop property on your land. Okay, so that is called as development rights, transfer of development rights. So you, the owner, the landlord, are going to transfer the development rights to the builder. And what the builder will do? He will construct the whole scheme. Suppose there are 600 flats coming up, but the land was yours. Ultimately, he will sell the flats to the public. He will open the scheme and sell it to the public. But what will you get in return? Say, for example, the value of your property was around, say, 100 crores. So he has to give you something back as a consideration. So what he does is, he gives you a portion of the constructed property. Or he can give you money. Either he gives you money of 100 crores or he gives you some part of the construction scheme. Now, if he gives you full consideration in money, then that becomes sale of immovable property. If you're selling your land to somebody for 100 crores, will that come under GST? No. Sale of immovable property, supply of immovable property is outside the purview of GST, because immovable property is not goods. Right? So sale of immovable property, sale of land, sale of building is outside. There will be no GST. So here in this example, you are not paid consideration wholly in money. Okay. So what happens? You are paid consideration in kind. That is, against your development rights that you are giving, you will be handed over a portion of the constructed property. Maybe 10 flats and a penthouse and this and that, plus some money also. So money can be there, but in part. The major chunk will be in kind, and then some adjustment in money may be there or may not be there. Even if it is there, it will come in service. So when you're giving development rights for construction to the builder, he constructs it and he hands over something back to you. That is a service. It's not goods anymore. It is a service. Service that you are giving to the builder, and he again giving you a service back in the form of construction. So it's a two-way service. You are giving one service to the builder and the builder is giving construction service to you. So both of you will be chargeable to tax. Both of you, the landlord and the builder, are chargeable to tax. How? Let's see. So here is the landlord who gives the development rights. So I'll write DR to the builder, and the builder gives back some flats, some construction. Means he's doing some construction activity for the landlord. So he is giving you the construction service for the landlord. By giving say 15 flats plus some consideration cash, maybe 3 crores. Okay. Now the point is that how will you value this and charge it to tax? For the landlord, the value will be this value of these 15 flats plus 3 crores. This total amount, the value of 15 flats and 3 crores, this will become the taxable value for the landlord. And for the builder, what is the value? The value of the land which is being given to him, the value of this DR which is given to him as a consideration. So DR becomes consideration for builder and this becomes consideration for the landlord. So both of them are taxable. Both of them will be taxable under GST. Now what will be the time of supply? So let's see. So this notification number 4 by 2018 discusses this issue. What it says? The central government on the recommendation of the council hereby notifies the following classes of registered persons, namely, first, registered persons who supply development rights to the developer or the builder or the construction company or any other registered person. So this other person can be named as a builder, he can be called as a developer, he can be called as a construction company, whoever he is. But this person, the registered person, is the landlord. Okay, so this is landlord who gives the development right, who supplies the development right to the developer or the builder or the construction company. Against what consideration? So it says against consideration wholly or partly in the form of construction service. So what he's getting in return is construction service, because he's getting the constructed flats. So it means that the builder is giving him construction service of constructing the flats for him. Okay. In the complex building or civil structure. Now it can be residential complex, it can even be commercial complex. So if there's a big commercial complex being built, then you get a portion of it, FSI of say 2 or 5 or whatever. And the registered person who supplies construction service. So this is about the second person, the developer or the builder, etc., or the construction company. To supplier of development rights. So it is vice versa, as I told you. Against construction wholly or partly in the form of development rights. So what he is getting is the development rights, and what he is giving is the constructed flats. So I get development rights, I give you construction service. You are the landlord, I am the builder. From your perspective, you are giving development rights and getting construction service. So it's that vice versa thing. Now let's see. As the registered persons in whose case the liability to pay central tax on supply of said services on the consideration received in the form of so and so, again that repetition of words are there. This whole thing is that vice versa, that I am giving you and getting this, and you are giving me this and getting that. So no need to read. So basically what it says is that this vice versa thing will be a supply. And when the supply will take place, so you can come down here, shall arise. Shall arise, found? Yes, shall arise. So both of these shall arise at the time when the said developer, builder or construction company or any other registered person, as the case may be, transfers possession, underline this word, transfers possession, or the right in the constructed complex, building or civil structure to the person supplying the development rights by entering into a conveyance deed or similar instrument. Like example is allotment letter. So in this example that we have written, landlord gives the development rights. So this he does say in on 17th August 2017. He gives the development rights to the builder. Then the builder employs his labor, brings material, starts construction activity. It takes time. So it takes a long time if it's a big building. Finally, these 15 flats and 3 crores were allotted. Means the possession was allotted. Yeah, possession granted, you can say. Possession allotted or granted on 29th March 2020. So the time of supply for both these people, for the landlord as well as for the builder, for both of them, the time of supply will be this: 29th March 2020. So the liability for tax arises on 29th March 2020 for both of them, and not 17th August 2017. So before this notification was issued, there was a lot of confusion as to what time the tax becomes payable, because landlord is allotting development rights on 17th August 17. So should he pay tax right now on 17th August? But he has nothing in return. So where will he pay tax from? He has not got any consideration. The consideration is going to be received later on 29th March 20. So government has issued notification saying that time of supply will be this: when the allotment letter, or you can say the grant of possession, happens. Simple? Great. So that's it. And then a few theory questions are given thereafter, so that we'll see in the, as I told you, separate lectures on all the questions.